All right, guys, welcome back into the fourth edition of the betting podcast. It's been a pretty solid 2 weeks in a row. Hazi's been on kind of a little bit of a hot streak, and I'll let him tell you guys about that.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago with the Hovland bet, and then last week we were talking about how, you know, these great players and now the new world number one. The reason why they're so good is because they don't allow their prolonged stretches or their so-called prolonged stretches, which usually isn't very long to last a while. And that's obviously what we saw with John Rahm last week. He was talking about it, and I think after the third round, he was talking about how he adjusted some of the lies on his clubs because over the quarantine he got stronger, and it definitely looks like it too. He looks a lot leaner and a lot stronger. My dad even made a comment about it the other day when we were watching it. So obviously, yeah, that figured out. That was after that was going into the final round of the workday, and then he was obviously unbelievable strokes gained approach that last round, and then he obviously just took that into the Memorial and just completely ran away with it. And I cashed him out for a little north of 7K just because of the way the course was playing and the way the course was set up. But I should have figured that everyone else is going to crumble around him as well. It's not like just John's going to crumble. But that's how it goes for me usually. Like, if I don't catch him out, he probably starts bogey, double, brings everybody back into play, and then I'm stressing the rest of the way. And he even almost blew it towards the end. I mean, if Palmer makes birdie on 15, and then if Rahm doesn't chip it on 16, it's literally a one-shot lead going into 17 after being 8 up after 8. So it was a wild week. I was just, happy to be north of 10K the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, to have a Sunday morning where you're already cashing again, that feels pretty darn good, and especially for last week where there's just a lot of crazy stuff going on. So I bet that felt good. But another solid week. Even looking at like some of the other guys that we talked about, if you guys did like the top 10s or top 20s, top 40s or whatever, it was a good week. I know Harris English was a specific one that we touched on. He ended up top 20. And then I know we were really high on Henrik Norlander. The podcast did break up at the end, but pretty much our thing was that, yeah, Henrik Norlander is the guy you need to be on for top 40. And then, if you guys wanted to bet him a little bit more than that, you can do that. But that's kind of the week that we have this week as well. I think a lot of this week can be bet on the guys that we're going to talk about, but you can bet them in the top 10, win it possibly. It's kind of a wide open week, but I really do like this week. I know off air I told you that I had walked this course and kind of got to see it firsthand, which is a good thing I think for the most part, but it's really just a course where you just need to keep giving yourself some opportunities, and eventually you're going to convert some of those putts for birdies. So I do really like this week. I know a lot of people are somewhat worried about it because it's a weaker field, but that's something we'll touch about as the podcast goes on. Do you have any thoughts on this week?
No, just Norlander saved my $200 single entry because, I had Rahm and Norlander, which obviously helped, and then fucking Berger, 3 under through 3. I also had him as an outright last week. I'm like, this is fantastic. I bet him first round leader as well. I'm like, okay, birdie 5, birdie 7. We're all of a sudden 5 under on the front. We're definitely going to be first round leader. And then just to absolutely miss the cut. And, thank God Norlander was only 8.5% owned or whatever in that contest. So I won a couple $100 in that. But yeah, Daniel Berger, man, just lots of short putts. He's been a good putter all year long, and then on Friday he just completely shit himself, and that epitomized on 9 on his 18th of the day.
Dude, that honestly might be like my worst beats like ever. Just like from the fairway, like 140 outs, dude hits in the water and then can't make a 5-foot putt to make the cut. It's just like, if he makes the cut, it's a massive week for me just in general, just because there's so many lineups that would have been 6 or 6 or 5 out of 6 that would have hit. You talked about Norlander. My best lineup had Norlander and Berger in it as well. So it's just one of those weeks where it's just slightly off, But
I had a buddy of mine that if he played Jason Day over Sung Jam, you would have won $1,000,000.
Oh, dang. That is crazy. I
I
mean,
asked him though if he ever considered, and he's like, no. So it's not like he was like, I should play Jason Day.
yeah,
But still, man, that's so rattling to know that you were Jason Day away from winning $1,000,000 when you
it
don't know if
is.
he's gonna get out of bed the next day.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I never really lose sleep over like stuff like that where I never even thought about it. For
Yeah, for
me,
sure.
for me last week, it was a little bit of my main build that I ended up on was either between Ricky or Abraham Answer. And I did something I hate doing, which is I kind of split it down the middle, 50-50, which I hate doing. I like committing to one made build. So the Ricky one actually ended up barely cash in some cash contests. The double bogey or whatever, the 2-stroke penalty that was assessed to Rahm actually
Yeah.
ended up making it cash, which was kind of a weird week in general. But
Well,
all right.
Yeah, I just read this on Twitter. I don't know if it's true that Slugger White said that if it wasn't like if that 2-shot penalty like changed the outcome of the tournament, they weren't going to call it or something along those lines.
No, they wouldn't have, which is
Yeah,
interesting, but
sure.
I don't mind it. Every golfer kind of does something like that where they put the club behind the ball and, it moves sometimes. It's just you're not going to call yourself on that where it doesn't affect the shot.
Well, I mean, Patrick Reed would never make a cut if.
Isn't it weird that Patrick Reed had 2 straight rounds under par?
Yeah, exactly. He went by himself on Saturday.
Yeah, it's weird how that happened. I don't know. But this week we'll get back into the winners here. So we do our top 3 picks. It is kind of top heavy, but I do think there are some long shot bets that could potentially go out and win. Matthew Wolff was somewhat a long shot bet last year, so we'll get it started. I'll go and get it started right away. Paul Casey is my guy this week. I do like Tony Finau as well, but all right, I'll start out with Tony Finau because Tony Finau was messaging you last week saying, hey, I hope he doesn't win this week because I love him next week. This course is set up perfectly for Tony Finau. Honestly, if Tony Finau or Paul Casey don't win this week, I'll be a little bit shocked. They're just such great stat fits. They're like the perfect golfer for this course because, yeah, sure, putting might not matter as much here, which should help Casey and Finau a little bit more, but it still does matter somewhat. So if they don't win, I do believe it'll be because of putting, but everything else is pretty much top 10 across the board for the key stats that we're looking at. So Paul Casey and Tony Finau, I really like. I'm looking at DK Sportsbook right now, plus 1,400 for Tony Finau and plus 1,800 for Paul Casey. Both okay odds. It's not horrible. I saw on Bet365 earlier that it's a little bit better. I don't know if you had those, but slightly better for those two. And that's really it for the top end. I will give the third pick here after you go. But yeah, that's what I got for Tony Finau and Paul Casey. Just great picks.
Yeah, man. Really, it was only one bad hole, kind of for both of them on the same hole. Paul Casey obviously made that 8 on 12, and then that kind of just derailed him. And then in the third round, Tony made that sloppy double on 12 again, and that kind of derailed him. But like you said, it's just whenever, Tony Finau, there's 3 par 5s. There's some long par 4s as well that he can use his length as an advantage. You were there last year, obviously walked the course. I expect the conditions and the setup to be relatively the same in terms of rough length being almost non-existent.
Even if it's a little bit more, it shouldn't affect it too much.
No. And and it's just the only thing that scares me is Tony Finau at 15-1, and you have that curse of everyone that wins the Puerto Rico Open never being able to win again. But like you said, I mean, he played pretty unbelievable. Like his short game, because he was in the feature group on Friday on PGA Tour Live, like that shot he hit out of the bunker on 4 was absolutely disgusting. He hit it to 6 inches. Like I don't know if he could do that again if he got another 100 golf balls. So obviously he's been working on his short game. His putting was actually relatively good, and everyone was critiquing his mental state about hitting in the water, but they failed to mention that every day his strategy was to go for the green, because even if you hit in the water, it's a relatively easy up and down. You move your par and move on, and the risk is worth the reward there. So, I like Tony Finau this week too. And we were touching off here a little bit. This could be the Rocket Mortgage where you're either getting Fleetwood, Finau, or Johnson. They're just going to run away with it, and they're obviously going to win because they're just 4 out of the top 50 in the world are here. So something not a very strong field. But you look at Doc Redman. He's a top stat fit here. I think you have him. I think he's the fourth stat fit here. Ball striking 8th, strokes gained 68th, total putting 145th. But I mean, it's like we said about Matthew Wolff won last year, and he's a pretty bad putter. And if you look down that leaderboard, it wasn't really great putters. And to get Doc Redman at 50-1 this week and 45-1 at the Rocket Mortgage, I will 100% bet him at 50-1 this week in a much weaker field, and of course where it's a lot more wide open, and he can really use his ball striking to an advantage, because we saw at the Rocket Mortgage he birdied 7 out of 8 holes, and one of those pars was a par 5. So I definitely like him.
It kind of reminds me a lot of Matthew Wolff last year, where things were kind of, or Colin Morikawa too, where things were kind of trending in the right direction for a young player, and it kind of seems like things are coming together for him. And you mentioned his putting splits. If he was like a top 50 putter, I would have to look again, but I think he'd be number 1 in the field for a stat fit. I mean, so
for sure, and his odds would be cut in half if he was even a top 80 putter.
Exactly. But just looking at the stats, him and
Yeah,
Paul
yeah.
Casey are essentially the same play. It's
Yeah.
just Doc Redmond doesn't have the name value. And we don't really know how Doc Redmond's going to respond after that horrible, round last week, but it wasn't the best course for him last week. The only
No, and the
reason,
conditions were extremely hard. Like a lot of guys struggled. And Matthew Wolff is, like you said about how they're almost the same player. Like I just mentioned about 7 out of 8 holes at Redmond birdie. When both of those players, Wolff and Redmond, get their putters going, they're going to make a lot of birdies and gain a lot of strokes on the field. And we saw that last year with Matthew Wolff. And this is kind of what I guess I was going to save it for the end of the show, but in terms of live betting guys, like maybe after the first or second round, we saw I think Matthew Wolff was 150 to 1 after the second round. And we saw he just went on absolute fire in the third round. I want to say he shot 9 under or something like that, and really shot up the leaderboard. And when you have guys that are so good ball striking, then that's going to happen. And this year, obviously, Matthew Wolff contended at the Rocket Mortgage, but his approach to the green stats were horrendous, whereas Doc Redmond tee to green is one of the best in the world. So once he starts rolling in some of those putts, you could see him running away with this, to be completely honest, because he is almost like Tony Finau if you weren't looking, if you just looked at the stats in terms of ball striking and putting.
yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with Doc Redmond there. It's going to be a good pick. He definitely has the upside to go on and win as well. It's just
sorry.
No, we pretty much summed it up pretty well there with Doc Redmond.
Yeah, and there's a couple of other guys that because I know we got 3 here.
Yeah.
Patrick Rogers as well. His putting is the complete opposite of Doc Redmond, and something that people say is not useful for this course in terms of needing to win to be a good putter.
So 1 second. So I think that's complete just BS.
Yeah.
Like if you're a good putter, you're a good putter. Like it's not a bad thing. It's never a bad thing.
Event, right? Like it was one event. This is a brand new tournament. Like if this was a 10-year trend where, okay, shitty putters are at the top of the leaderboard, then okay, it has some merit. But yeah, like one tournament where you have like 4 guys aren't even on the PGA Tour anymore that I think we're on that leaderboard. Like, let's be honest. So
he's top 50 in strokes gained off the tee as well. It's like if you're putting yourself in good positions and you're a great putter, that's some good stuff right there.
And if he didn't perform the way he did last week, I definitely would not even think about playing this week. But a guy who putts like that and came I think, what did he finish, 1 or 2 over at the Memorial? Something like pretty decent. So to be able to like grind and to know where, his ball striking hasn't been there where he wants it this year, but to continue to grind and battle out 4 rounds and put in 4 scores and to finish where he did, I think that's going to give him some momentum going into this week, where if he starts filling up the cup early, it's like, okay, if he's feeling it. And, we've seen him contend before. Charles Howell obviously beat him at, I think it was the RSM where Howell won for the first time and whatever, but Patrick Rogers is right there. So we know he has a talent to be contending at the top of the leaderboard.
Yeah, you summed it up pretty well there. If maybe later on in the podcast, he'll be the guy I wouldn't play in DraftKings, but I'd love to bet. He might be that guy. He's not going to be, but it's close because I don't know if I can trust him in DraftKings, but he makes perfect sense for an outright bet. You talked about it. It's a guy that last week he shouldn't have played well. He shouldn't have made the cut, and he did. You look at his bogey avoidance, his top 70, which isn't great. He grades out as like a around 40th stat fit this week, which, it's not great, but that's kind of the week that we have. And he's a streaky guy. So if he gets hot with his putter, there's no telling what he can do. So I definitely agree with Patrick Rogers there as an outright kind of deeper bet.
Yeah, man. And because this is where we were talking about last week, how, and obviously if you throw out the history of time, it's going to be guys that are in the 20 to 40 range that win majority of the time. And last week, like I said, I wasn't going below 40. Like I think Tony Finau was my lowest bet at 40 to 1 last week because it was going to be that type of week where a stud was going to win. But this week could be the complete opposite. And you look at a guy like Richy Rivas, competes at the Honda. We know it's a tough course. Competes at the Rocket Mortgage. He had that sloppy 3rd or 4th round, whatever it was. But so you have a course that's hard and a course that's, you need to make a lot of birdies, and he's contending at both. So, you come to the 3M Open here where, and, he was on the big breaks. This guy's been through some adversity. He knows how to string together some cuts. I think he's made 5 cuts in a row. So he's almost like a knock on wood, a safe bet to make the cut. And that's all you want out of a guy like him at 80 to 1, who we've seen up on the first page of the leaderboard after 36 holes multiple times this year. And I think he came 3rd. I want to say he came 3rd at the Greenbrier, but don't quote me on that. At the beginning of the 2019-2020 season. So, yeah, that's another guy that at 80 to 1, he has, like we talked about Henrik Norlander. Yeah, he's been playing really well, but doesn't have nearly the kind of track record that Rich Werenski does at 80-1.
Yeah, so a lot of the times people will ask me like, "Hey, how were you on Nick Taylor, Lanto Griffin, Sebastian Munoz?" It's because I'm saying this because Richy Rivas is kind of the exact same play this week, where it's like he's been in great form, he's a relatively good stat fit, he's showing some decent course history / comp course history. If Richy Rivas goes out and wins, it's not going to surprise us at all because he's kind of checking all the boxes. Sure, you don't expect it to happen, but if it does, it's really not shocking at all. Where some other guys, Brennan Grace, if he won, that'd be shocking. It's kind of like around the same odds there. That'd be shocking to me. But Richy Rivas, it's like, 5 straight May cuts in a row. He's a guy that, is looking like he's going to be a fine play this week.
Well, we also talked about last week, Kevin Streelman was 70-1. Kevin Streelman at the Memorial was 71. We're getting 10 points better on Richy Rivas in a glorified Corn Ferry Tour event. Like, it's a no-brainer, and that's where you got to be selective. Like, last week I went heavy units-wise on John Rahm. Like, I bet more on him than anyone else because I was just confident. This week, we talk about all the time about being, a little bit more selective, and I'm not going to bet as much this week or as many players because it's just unpredictable. But, yeah, Richy Rivas at 80-1 or whoever, Scott Stallings at 80-1, who I like this week as well, is a way better play than a Kevin Streelman at 70-1 last week. So just because you want to bet on a golfer or you like betting golf, you got to be selective and patient because we still have so many more events to come up. And speaking of Munoz, like you said, he completely fucked me on my top 40 last week. That I was like, if you make the cut, you have a greater chance of being top 40 than no. He shot a nice little 79 in the 4th round and just shit himself like Berger did on 9.
Dude, it was such a frustrating Friday morning for me. Just in general, I like the whole morning. I'm like, man, this is going pretty well. This is gonna be a great week. And then all of a sudden, like Webb had like a 12-footer on 17. I'm like, oh, he could make this. And I'm like, even if he doesn't, he's got the one more hole to get a birdie. Yeah. He just missed the birdie putt, and then he probably tried to go for it on 9. And just Nick Taylor had a horrible lie on 17. It kind of fell apart, but like I said earlier, came together on Sunday to kind of get lucky there. Yeah. My last guy, kind of echoing what we said last week, where, you want to bet the top end guys because most likely they're going to win. And there was one guy that I pointed out last week that I liked quite a bit, and not necessarily for, an outright win, but it was more for like a top 10, top 20. That's our boy, Harris English. So Harris English just grades out as a great stat fit. Second overall. If he honestly does poorly, it's really going to shock me. He's had 9 finishes in the top 20 this year. Obviously, if you want to adjust the field strength, which, I somewhat agree with, like adjusting field strength to like projecting how someone's going to finish, but also you just you got to play your game and play well. But if you were to adjust those tournaments, that'd be a top 10 finish this week. His lowest stat fit is, let me pull it up here real quick. Birdie or better percentage, which is 93rd, but he ranks 4th in bogey avoidance, and everything else is top 30 or better. So he is just an elite stat fit this week. The only problem with Harris English is that he missed the cut here last year, but your first time playing a course, whatever, sometimes that just happens. So I'm kind of throwing that out. Love the great recent form, love the stat fit, and he's a guy that I really like. Let me pull up his odds here real quick.
I think he's 33-1 on Bet365.
33-1, so he's 35-1 on DraftKings, a little bit better there. So pretty solid odds for a guy that really won't be shocking if he goes out and wins it.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said, but for me, it's just kind of along the lines of a Tony Finau at 15-1. That's Harris English at 34-1 to start a tournament just scares me a little bit. But like you said, it was kind of like the Rahm. Like, I don't want to compare Rahm and English at all because they're obviously not the same player. But like we're talking about, if Rahm turns it around, it's not going to surprise us. If English, makes some more putts, like you said, he doesn't really make a lot of birdies, but he avoids the big numbers. And if he starts rolling in some putts, it's like, okay, it was just right here. The stats fit. Everything was pointing in the right direction. He had a good Memorial tournament. But it's just the 34-1 scares me. The same with Glover. It's just those numbers were a little bit higher. I would definitely be more keen on them like you are.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem with this week is that the numbers aren't as favorable as they would be in a normal week. I do have a quick question for you. So a lot of people have been asking me this week specifically about like world golf rankings. And I was looking at Harris English, and he's like over 100 right now. I believe I might have to double check that. I believe that's right. But I'm like, this dude has been like a top 25 golfer this year, like across the world. I'm sorry, he has been. He's been a stud this year, especially early on where he has top 10 finishes. And, in this tournament, I would probably say that, after DJ, which DJ has kind of struggled, after Fleetwood and Casey, you could make a strong argument that Harris English is the next best, just this season.
Yeah. He's
What's your
139th ranked player in the world. I just saw that now, and I agree with you. Like I said about only being like 4 players in the top 50 that are there this week. It's like, yeah, he's been playing really well, and that actually makes the 34-1 number a little bit more enticing for me, knowing that people kind of are on him this week in terms of they think he's going to play well, and I know that always doesn't correlate to them playing well, but it's rare that you find a guy that has top 20 stat fits everywhere, essentially, except one category. So, and he's been playing really well, and you never know. Like, these guys, they want to play the Masters. They want to get into the U.S. Open, the PGA's in a couple of weeks. So they're really trying to play as much as possible and get up as high as possible in the world rankings to get into these fields without, having to qualify. So maybe that's another added reason that Harris English might go out there and play really well this week.
Exactly. So it's just, he just seems like not a no-brainer, because it's definitely not at his odds, but it's like one where, just throw a little bit of units at it and, probably hope to get lucky, because it is a great stat fit. You mentioned like a guy that's, top 20 and everything that we're looking at. One that was Webb last week, but it was also English pretty much. It was also Rahm, and I forget there's one other, but,
Ryan Palmer.
Not Ryan Palmer. He actually did great out for Lee, but more times than not, those guys are going to go out and produce. They're going to top 15. They're going to top 10. They're going to, potentially win. So that's why you got to look at all that stuff, because when you paint the full picture, that's when it really matters. So we'll do a couple of deeper dives. Do you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
Sure, yeah, you can go first, yeah.
Okay. So my first one is actually going to be Chasten Hadley, who I've gone on a ton more as the week has went on. He's a top 11 stat fit, actually. So that's really why I like him. A lot of my builds were coming down to like the 7K range on DraftKings, and I had to dive a little bit deeper because Matthew Naismith was there, who, the dude is fine in the first round, and then he just chokes in the second round. I don't hate Matthew Naismith this week. He's a top 10 stat fit, but the dude's burned us enough to the point where I'm kind of over it. But Chasten Hadley this week, I mean, top 20 stat fit. If he can limit his bogeys, he's going to be great, because he ranks like 170th in bogey avoidance, but in birdie or better percentage, he is 14th. In strokes gain approach, he is 20th. He just ranks out really well, especially for this course. He's a guy that should really go out and play well. I tweeted something out earlier this week, yesterday, comparing like pretty much DJ's and Chasten Hadley stats. I'm like, Hadley's slightly worse than DJ, but I love the odds on Chasten Hadley. Let me try to pull him up real quick. I know I had him written down, but my writing is kind of trash, so I apologize for that.
Next doctor.
Yeah, dude. Doctor. Let's see here. So I got it, I think 110-1 on DraftKings, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, he's 126-1 on Bet365, so you're getting a little bit better there.
Yeah, so that'd be a good bet on Bet365 there. But even the top 10 or top 20, I think that'd be a strong bet for Chasten Hadley. So that's going to be my first kind of value pick. Do you have any?
Yeah, man. There's a few in here that you could go. There's multiple directions, and he was on the Florida State golf team with Brooks Koepka. He had a really good workday performance. I like Chase Seifert this week, or however the fuck you say his last name.
Seifert.
Whatever. Tomato. He's been playing well as of late. His statistics aren't the greatest, but I think that's more so just due to the fact that he hasn't played a lot this year, and there's not really a lot of tournaments for you to go off of. But his recent form is something that I like personally, and at someone north of 100-1 in this field. If you can shoot 14 under at the Memorial, obviously it was the work day, but obviously it wasn't in the same condition as the Memorial. Still, that's 14 under par or 12 under par, whatever he shot that week. So you obviously can go low, and I think the 3M, the TPC Twin Cities, is a little bit of an easier course than Muirfield Village. So I like Chase Seifert this week at 100. Let me just double check quickly. 126-1, just like Hadley.
Yeah, those are good odds. And that's, again, another player. This is kind of the theme of this week. Is like there's a lot of players that I would be fine betting outright or, betting to top 10 where I don't necessarily feel comfortable putting them in a DraftKings build. His price is, decent for DraftKings, but I do like the call for like a top 10, outright bet as well, because he's the guy that has shown that he can go low, and it's just a matter of eventually converting that. So I don't mind the what are you calling it? Seifert or Seifert? Whatever.
Seifert.
All right, we're gonna go with Seifert then.
Yeah.
My next,
get him on one day and he can tell us.
Yeah, exactly. He'll say both just to mess with us, though.
Yeah.
My next one, the next two, I don't really like for outright bets, but I think based on their odds, it's not horrible. The first one's going to be Johnson Wagner, 250 to 1. He's the guy that has kind of sucked this year, but he's made 2 cuts in a row, which he's only made like 3 out of the year total, which is not great. But the last 2 cuts he's made were fine. He typically is a good ball striker, total driver. He only ranks top 70 in both of those right now, but he doesn't really make bogeys, and he's normally a pretty strong strokes gain guy, and he's normally a good putter. I don't know if it's the events that he has played, because he hasn't played that many events this year, to the point where, he hasn't been playing tournaments that favor his game, where a lot of the guys get to pick and choose, golf events that favor their game. So his stats could be a little bit skewed because he's a golfer that has to play events to keep his card. But he had a 23rd finish here last year. He grades out decent. He grades out as someone that should make the cut. You just got to give yourself opportunities. So at those odds for a guy that should make the cut, I really don't mind it.
Yeah, I think I don't know if he shaved his mustache yet, but maybe that was slowing his swing speed down a little bit and making his game a little bit rusty. But going back to your buddy there, Tim Wilkinson, I know you liked him at where was it, at the chart at was it the first week you liked him?
So
or was it an alternate? I think that was
so I liked him like 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
It was when he was an alternate and you couldn't like bet on him really. I might just keep an eye on this guy. He can go low. I think he like had a really bad double bogey that ended up making him miss the cut by 1. And then he just really struggled the next tournament. But then we saw him pop last week.
Yeah, man. And 400 to 1 this week, kind of like English, where birdie or better is 113th, but like his bogey avoidance is top 30 this week, top 30 stat fits, strokes gained tee to green, top half of the field, ball striking, top half of the field, total putting, kind of near the bottom. But if it's anything like last week, last year, where you don't need to putt, then he's definitely a guy that can get up there. And at 400 to 1, I like him. And also quickly, just he's 64 to 1. 64 to 1, 6,400 on DraftKings, his salary. And this is almost a week where you could like almost justify yourself, like putting Johnson and Fleetwood on most of your builds, and maybe even like a Casey there or something, and then just like hammer a lot of 6,500 guys that are good stat fits and that people aren't really going to touch, because there's so, like you said, even on Twitter, and we were talking about, like, there's so much value like below 7,000 this week that you could justify really like loading up your card at the top and then getting a Wilkinson at 6,400 to 1 or a Seamus Power at 6,500.
Yeah, so a lot of the people actually on the 905 chat were reaching out to me just like individually, kind of wondering what their lineup pass should be on DraftKings this week. I'm like, I don't suggest it, but I don't hate the idea of kind of just scheduling in 2 missed cuts. Now, obviously you hope that they make the cut, but what I mean by that is like going with like 2 players down in that pricing range where you're assuming that they're going to miss a cut, but then everyone else in your build, you're assuming that they're going to, top 10 and top 15 given their price point range. So This is a week where, 4 out of 6 would probably be the norm. So I don't hate that in terms of DraftKings. My last play is going to be a guy that you just touched on, actually, Seamus Power. I think his game's trending in the right direction. Obviously, his last start was a little bit better than he, typically would play, top 12 finish. But I got his odds at 300 to 1, which is pretty nice for a guy that this course does fit his game pretty well. So it really wouldn't surprise me if he, went out and played well. Like I said, 3 straight make cuts in a row. His birdie or better percentage is top 10. If he can clean up the bogeys, that's going to be great. He's top 60 in like total putting, strokes gained off the tee, or strokes gained total, sorry. And then, strokes gained off the tee as well. So don't hate that play at those odds. Once again, that's another guy this low that should make the cut. And then if his game's going well, he could potentially show that upside to win.
Yeah, that was going to be my other guy too. I know I mentioned him a few seconds before you did, but yeah, just a guy that's 6,500 on DraftKings, and definitely a guy that we saw him at the Rocket Mortgage, and this is kind of the same field, so maybe there's some good vibes there with him this week at in Minnesota.
Yeah,
we didn't talk about your buddy though, Troy Merritt.
So
Minnesota native, where he went to school, or is he a Minnesota native, or he just went to school there?
So I think I don't know where he's from originally. I think it might have been one of the Dakotas, but he went to WSU, Winona State University. That's where I went as well. He only played for like a year and a half there, and then he transferred up. But I mean, come on, you've played those courses around that area. I'm sure he's played that course as well. I really don't like him as a play. This is another thing I posted on Twitter. It's like people are going crazy for Erik van Rooyen, mostly just because of his world golf ranking, but also because
he's a golden golfer.
He's a golden golfer. I'm like, come on. Troy Merritt has shown much more upside than Erik van Rooyen. And, you know, they're both pretty streaky golfers where you can't really trust them. I'm seeing a lot of people saying Van Rooyen is a great cash play this week, which is like, who, you know, those are.
You hope he is, and then you'll just cash in on everybody's stupidity.
I hope so. I mean, you look at his last 4 starts, it's been like 100th finish, top like 30, 100 finish, top 20. It's like, that's great when he top 20s, but you know, it's
100th and gets you 10 points for the week. Yeah.
Too risky for me. There are a couple of deeper odds I just want to mention out there. Cameron Davis is a guy that I could see going off and playing well. He ranks top 20. Nick Watney as well also ranks as a top 20 staff hit. Really don't like those guys on DraftKings this week, but for betting purposes, I could see them popping.
Yeah. And Troy Merritt's from good old Osage, Iowa. I think that's how you say it.
Iowa. Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Close enough to the Dakotas. Fuck, Midwest.
Yeah, exactly. I should have just said Midwest. You're right.
I know better American geography than you do.
Dude, I am pretty bad at geography in general. I concentrate on sports in high school, so whatever. So I do have a promo code. It's from one of my buddies. His name is Brooks. Yeah, well, he goes by Brooks Radio on Instagram, Twitter, and whatnot for BetMGM. I think that's the website. So BetMGM, I'll post a slide up here. He does have a promo code going out. It's Brooks100. Get you guys $100 free out there. I know it's like New Jersey, Nevada, Indiana, and West Virginia are like the 4. So if any of you guys are listening in those areas, you know, take advantage of that. That's going to be a pretty good thing. I looked at some of the odds earlier. That's pretty solid. So I just want to post that out there for you guys if any of you guys are interested in that. It's pretty much free money. But we'll move on to the next session. I know we kind of already mentioned a couple of them. For me personally, is there one player that you would bet on this week that you would not touch on DraftKings?
Oh man. Apparently he shot 64 at Shinnecock this past weekend, which is like, fuck, I'd be shooting 64 after 6 holes at Shinnecock. But it's just, we saw Tiger, and obviously he's in much better physical condition than Tiger, but we saw Tiger 200-3 early in the first round and then kind of fall back a little bit because it's not medalist. It's tour level competition, tour level conditions and all that. Like Tommy Fleetwood this week, maybe 17-1. Like it wouldn't shock me if he, like, I'm going to play him in some DraftKings lineups, but like I feel more confident in having him just more of an outright. I know his odds aren't the greatest, but like, for him to be 17-1 in this field is almost like a slap in the face for someone of Tommy Fleetwood's caliber. Like, just because he hasn't played doesn't mean that he deserves to be 17-1 at fucking TPC Twin Cities fucking House League golf course. You know what I mean? For him.
I mean, this course really sets up well for DJ, Tommy Fleetwood, Tony Finau, and Paul Casey. Just a ton. I would say Brooks as well, but he's playing like ass right now. So I definitely agree with that. So,
and I really don't understand the Bubba Watson love. Like I know he's kind of played half decent lately, but like again, I got burned at him at the Genesis this year because I put like $300 on him because everyone was touting him, and he completely stunk, and he's been shit up until maybe he missed 3 cuts in a row before the layoff, and then he's had a couple good events, and all of a sudden he's back. I don't get it.
Yeah, so the thing with Bubba Watson this week is that his finishes, his missed cuts haven't been that bad. It's actually been decent golf. It just hasn't been a good enough, you know, to make the cut. It's been under par. I get the Bubba Watson love this week. And actually I'm going to play him a little bit in DraftKings, but that would actually be my, you know, I'd rather bet him than playing in DraftKings this week. That's actually my guy. So that's pretty much why you summed it up. Or, you know, made cuts actually matter. You know, recent form and making cuts actually matters. And he's a guy that really just hasn't been doing it this year. So that's the worry there.
I feel like, tell me if I'm wrong, but isn't this year, like since we've come back, there's been more millionaire maker lineups that don't use the full salary than normal? Definitely feels that way with like Palmer being there, and usually you see like lineups that are 49.9 or 49.8, the absolute lowest in years past, where there's been some more consistency. But like some of the optimal lineups and some of even the winners have definitely been like a few $100s short of the max.
Yeah, so this since break, it definitely has been a year where you could leave some salary off just because, DK has done a great job pricing pretty much, but there have been some players that really stood out, whether, it's pretty much been Adam Hadwin, the last 3 weeks, where it's like, whew, that's some bad pricing there, DraftKings. So, they have been doing that quite a bit. So it's not a bad strategy, but, you never really want to do that. I'm trying to look at some matchups right now. There's a decent amount of quality ones. One thing I do want to say real quick, though, is Russell Henley versus Chasten Hadley. It's not a matchup, but if you could create that, I would love it because these guys are pretty much the same player. And, sure, Henley flashed a little bit more upside with 2 top 10 finishes, but Hadley's a little bit better stat fit, and they pretty much made the exact same cuts, If Henley misses the cut, it's not going to be surprising. Sure, if Hadley misses the cut, it's not going to be surprising either, but I would much rather take those odds with Hadley. I don't get Russell Henley other than the top 10 finishes. It's a little bit scary for me at that price point at its odds. So if you could find something with Russell Henley with a favorable guy, I do show Harris English is minus 118 versus Russell Henley, who's minus 106. I like that. But if you could find a little bit better one, a guy that's plus, go with that.
Yeah, man. Here on Bet365, it's Harris English versus Russell Henley this weekend. They're both $1.90. So, yeah, man. That's another one where I do not understand is the Russell Henley love this week. Like, I think he popped a little bit at work day, but it's like it's Russell Henley, man. This isn't the Houston Open the week before the Masters anymore. Russell Henley, like it just feels that we've seen this before, where guys of his caliber pop up for a little bit and then just completely fall off the face of the earth again. And Harris English has just consistently been good, and again, he's not getting the respect he deserves. And I think just by talking about Harris English more and more, I'm convincing myself of betting him this. But maybe I don't know if that's a good sign or not. And then also Paul Casey versus Matthew Wolff. Like, again, I've been burned multiple times on Paul Casey. I remember betting in the Euro Tour last year, and he was like 1 over through 9. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And then they caught up to him on 10, and he's like, oh, yeah, it didn't sleep well last night. And not. It's like, yeah, fuck, Paul. Like, that would have been good to tell me 16 hours ago before I made your 30-1, whatever the fuck you were at the HSBC China, whatever the tournament was. But again, like one bad hole. Yeah, he stinks. I bet him at WGC Mexico. Fuck me there, whatever. He stinks, can't putt. But Matthew Wolff, again, he had that one good week at the Rocket Mortgage. I know he won here last year, but the only reason he did well at Rocket Mortgage is both things had to go right. He had to all of a sudden learn how to hit his irons because, listen, I know his swing, be it whatever you think, he gets into the right position, but that swing can go off way more often than other players just because there's so many moving parts that need to be in sync as opposed to a guy like Bryson who's almost like a one-plane guy. But yeah, so then he had to approach everywhere. Then he also had to roll in his putts. So both those things had to happen, which don't usually happen for him. So to take Paul Casey, who's consistently good tee to green, and then if he can – I could totally see Matthew Wolff missing the cut this week. That would not be surprising for me. And to get Paul Casey at $1.83, sign me up.
Yeah, I completely agree there. It's like you just got to play what's most likely going to happen. A lot of the times some people get really caught up in what could happen, which is why Russell Henley's that high up. And, is really why Matthew Wolff's that high up for odds and on DraftKings this week. It's like, oh, they could go off. It's like, sure, that could happen. It's just not as likely as some of these other guys. So I completely agree there. The only one I really like is Taylor Gooch and Richy Rivas. Obviously, I like Richy Rivas to win that one.
Yeah, man. And speaking of Taylor Gooch, again, I swear to God, these are signs because, man, I was watching a thing on YouTube yesterday. It was this guy who he plays out of Oklahoma. He plays out of this golf club. I think Pine Tree, I want to say. Anyways, there's some 18 tour pros are members there. Taylor Gooch, I think, is from Oklahoma. He plays golf out of Oklahoma. It just feels like all these things are lining up because, yeah, like if you look at Taylor Gooch on DraftKings, like he makes a lot of cuts.
He does. He does make a lot of cuts.
And he's a decent player. And I think that there's so many people that you forget about here that you like overlook a guy like Taylor Gooch. And just to quickly touch on, like, your buddy for MGM, you get that $100 thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, online poker is not coming back anytime soon, but like to have all these states start legalizing sports betting is, one, going to give us so many more options in terms of where to bet, where we can get the best odds. And I think that's why Matthew Wolff is 29th one, because you have all these new golf fans that know nothing about golf. They type in 2019 3M Open. Oh, Matthew Wolff. Click. Like, there's no way in hell he should be 30 to 1 this week. But that's the thing. It's like the more and more the sports betting becomes legal, it's just going to give guys like us an advantage, because there's going to be way more people that have no clue what they're doing and way less of us that have somewhat of an idea what we're doing, right? So this is only going to benefit us having all of these states legalize gambling more and more.
Yeah, that's definitely true. It's like golf is the one sport where, yes, someone that doesn't know anything can get lucky a couple of weeks, but eventually the guys that know what they're talking about are going to win more times than not, and especially in the long term. So, dude, I completely agree with that. That's smart. And yeah, Wisconsin here for me, it's looking like we're going to be the last state to legalize betting. So I might have to take a trip to Illinois or Iowa here when the Masters over. PGA. Yeah, it's like an hour drive. So I might have to do that. So when the majors come around, but I'm looking at DraftKings right now, DraftKings Sportsbook. They don't have any top 40s out right now. And maybe that's just because it has been, kind of easier recently. And they're like, man, some people are really taking advantage of that. It honestly could be. So they really only have top 20s. So, really, I know I don't really want to be this guy, but pretty much everyone that's in the player pool this week on 9 to 5 Sports, I really like for, to top 20, because they're guys that either I think are going to make the cut or they have some really strong top 20 upside. So that's really what I'm chasing this week. And I know a lot of the guys that we really favor, we've already talked about 2 top 20. Are there any other ones that stuck out that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, man, I can't even get on DraftKings Sportsbook, so it's not really missing out because obviously you can't get any there. But, yeah, man, Hudson Swafford seems to be popping a little bit for me. I don't know why. He seems to be ball striking is again, he's not terrible. I think we saw him. I think he was in Hubbard's group where we were walking around at the Honda Classic last year. And that's a course where, like, if you want to compete, you have to be a good ball striker. And obviously this course isn't as hard, but you still got to be able to take good golf shots. And at Phoenix earlier in the year, Hudson Swafford was right there in the final group. So, or I think he was second last group anyways, right there near the lead. And he's like 7.5 to 1. So, that's a top 20. You never know with him. I mean, because, again, just like Richy Rivas, Phoenix, you got to go low. Hudson Swafford's been able to do that. Honda, you got to just manage your score. You even 1 over is a good score there, and that's what he did. So to get a guy like him at 7.5 to 1 who has shown some recent form, I mean, but again, I think that you're right in terms of, I said it's like Munoz fucking, but yeah, if you make the cut, you got a great chance of top 40, and they're probably like, and with so many less guys making the cut, they're probably getting killed a little bit, and I don't blame them.
Yeah, that honestly might be what it is. Hudson Swafford was one of those guys that I scratched my head over for a while, decided not to include him just because there's some other players I liked a little bit better, but I definitely get the play there. The only 2 that I'll mention for this are actually Matthew Naismith, DJ Trey, and the great out as decent stat fits. If you guys want to play him, you can, but that's just how to get them in there. Yeah. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. I think we'll just wrap it up here with our one and dones, and then I guess we'll do our favorite top 20 bet this week since there isn't a top 40 available. Do you want to start or should I? You better not take my guy again, although he missed the cut. So.
No, I won't take your guy, but again, I could be completely overreading the situation, but Max Homa at 4 to 1 to be a top 20. He's one of those guys on Twitter that you see that actually engage in fans who chirp him about, like, he fucked my DraftKings this week. And he's like, all right, man, it's not like I'm not trying, whatever. But he says, and I know they like saying this, but he says his game's trending in the right direction. And this could be a course where he pops off to not only top 20, but to win as well. So I like Max Homa at 4 to 1 for my favorite top 20 bet.
Yeah, I don't mind that. And I do actually like him as like a high upside play as well. I'm looking for Richy Rivas for my top 20. I'm not seeing the odds on him. Again, let me see here. Do you have it on Bet365 by chance?
I'll find it. I got, I definitely put home on my $200 single entry just
for upside reasons.
Yeah, 4.33.
Okay, so that's not bad odds for someone that's, pretty much checking all the boxes. So I don't mind Richy Rivas this week for a top 20. And then we'll see here for the one and done outright picks. So just to recap, really none of them are in the field, I don't think. Mine had been, oh man, I can't remember now. Xander.
I went with last.
You went with Berger, and it made sense.
Right, yeah.
Dude, if he would have made the cut, he ranked out like top 10 in third round scoring and like fourth round scoring. So I really think he could have easily top 10. I know I went with Xander last week, who snuck into a top 15 finish, and we were all over Norlander last week. So, it's been pretty solid for this like hybrid one and done thing that we've been doing this week or this year. So my one and done pick is going to be Tony Finau. So sorry to steal that from you, but I do like Tony Finau this week.
No, he was not going to be my one and done. Okay. We're talking about Xander actually on Twitter yesterday about that guy, man, to be 8 over after 10 holes or whatever he was and to grind out a top 15, like that just shows that he's got it up here. Mm-hmm. And West Coast PGA Championship, West Coast Major, give me those West Coast California guys. And I like Xander a lot. But my one and done this week is going to be Tommy Fleetwood. I mean,
I get it.
Yeah, it's just like, I don't like him in any other field the rest of the year. Like PGA, I wouldn't take him as my one and done. Like US Open, no. Masters, no. Just the fields are too strong. WGC, I don't even know. If he's gonna play Memphis again, that's gonna be another tough field. So to have him at 17-1 in this field, he's literally okay. We haven't seen him, but DJ's looked like ass last week. I know he won the Travelers, but Brooks Koepka still has that knee issue. Tony Finau is hit or miss, and Tommy Fleetwood 17-1. He's gonna be on one and done.
Yeah, I mean, you could easily argue that Tommy Fleetwood's the best player in the field. And I think other than Colin Morikawa, he was the one player that like made 20 cuts in a row on the PGA Tour over the last year. So I definitely get the Tommy Fleetwood call, and especially for a one and done pick where, I mean, the field strength and Tommy Fleetwood here, where it sets up perfectly for him, that's a great call. I like that.
Yeah. And if he wins, I'll look like a genius. And if not, maybe you'll put it in the water on 9 like Berger did and just completely fuck our lineups.
Hey, I mean, we had Berger with a win earlier on at the first events, Bryson now, John Rahm now. So
can't be complaining too much. You're right.
Can't be complaining too much. No. It's been pretty good. But that's all we have for this week's podcast. I think next week we're going to try to go live if we can figure everything out. If not, it'll be the next week after that. But we're going to try to figure out to go live, and then we can answer some of you guys' questions as they come in throughout the live stream. We'll have to figure out kind of the nuances of that. But hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. We'll be ready for next week's event for you guys. Let's have a good week, and as always, let's keep cashing.